Good afternoon. Welcome to the last session of the day, or well, before the closing keynote. My name is Joris, and I'll be talking about Search API, facets, and related search modules. I work for a small company in Belgium called Dazzle. This is our offices, and we're looking for people, so if you want to work in Belgium, come talk to me. Or if you want to talk Search API, we can do that as well. So we'll be talking about Search API, Solr, Facets, a couple of other related modules, and how to implement custom code through the plugin API. So what am I going to be talking about? Well, building a search solution in Drupal. Something like this. Something that has a bunch of entities listed in a view and has searching on keywords, it has facets, filters, sorting, all those things. But I guess most of you already know what Search API does, since you're in this room right now. So, Search API. I'll start with a short introduction about how it came to be, then I'll talk about the merge between Apache Solr and Search API Solr. I'll give a couple of influences, a short overview of the basic architecture, and then a demo. Not a live demo, don't worry, I'm not going to try that. So back in 2010, for Drupal 7, a couple of people had suggestions on how to improve core search. They wanted to create a flexible solution for searching that uses different kind of data. So not just nodes or users, but also taxonomy terms and commerce products and different kind of entities on different search engines, not just MySQL. And by allowing also creating different user interfaces to provide a better user experience. Now we have a really good tool in Drupal to build user interfaces. It's called Views. And it's not used in core search. Not in Drupal 7, not in Drupal 8. So we figured, why not build a solution that actually uses our list builder? And this is what we did. We made a solution that makes it possible to build views of your entities, any entities, that includes features like facets and sorts and the other things listed on the screen. So, about 4 years ago, Search API and Search API Solr were different modules. They still are on Drupal 7. Search API Solr and Apache Solr, the Apache Solr module. And two maintainers of the modules sat together and they figured that because the maintenance burden for supporting such widely used modules is quite high, that they wanted to merge it to reduce the load on the maintainers and to provide a better solution with less fragmentation in the ecosystem. So they started a crowdfunding campaign. We had a couple of Google Summer of Code students. And this means that the Apache Solr module for Drupal 7 will still be available, but there will be no Drupal 8 version of that module. There will only be Search API and Search API Solr. So we started working at sprints. This was a dedicated 5-day sprint in Belgium. This was DrupalCon Amsterdam, DrupalCon Barcelona, DrupalCon Dublin. I guess you get the gist. We worked at all the events. There were people working here. Shut up, Google now. Shutting down my phone. That was excellent timing. So we sprinted at all the events, including here, yesterday and today, and tomorrow as well. So we started sprinting and building a new solution. That was influenced by a couple of things. And one of those is one I really want to mention, is the Drupal.org issue queues, because they are powered by Search API with a MySQL backend. Drupal.org is using MySQL as a backend. So this means that if you are creating a website that has less nodes than the Drupal.org issue queue, that should not be the reason to not use MySQL as a backend. It is powerful enough. I mean, Drupal.org runs it. This also meant that there were a lot of optimizations on the MySQL backend, on the code, and to make it scalable and to make sure that it works and that it's very stable, because we all use Drupal.org, so we wanted to have it very stable and working very well. And all of those things that were improved in the Drupal 7 version, because D.O is a Drupal 7, were also ported to the Drupal 8 version. So that means that we have a very stable solution that's been tested on a quite intensive website, which is great. A couple of people in the community also really helped, and I just took like the top 12 contributors, I think. A couple of them are here. If you see one of them, and just give them a hug or tell them thanks. Because everything got done by the community. Well, not really everything, most of it. This is a timeline that stops in February of this year, so I should update this slide soon. But as you can see, we had Drupal Dev Days in Szeged, and a lot of issues got committed, a lot of lines of code got added, and a lot of work got done at that event, as well as DrupalCon, or Dev Days in Montpellier, or another DrupalCon. And if I'm going to make this slide to include the last months of this year, then we will also see Dev Days and DrupalCon as dots that appear that we can say, oh, so much code got added because of that event. Now, there's also this one, these two, and those were funded by the Acquia team. So both me and Thomas Seidel got funded to work on Search API for 2 months to get the Drupal 8 version out and stable and in a state that everyone wants it to be. Okay, so there's basically 3 things that are of importance in the Search API module. There's an index, which is what are we going to be looking for. That's the entity that holds the information of the nodes or node types or users, and what bundles do we have to include and all those things. There's a server, which is the actual backend that we're going to be searching in, be it Solr or MySQL or another backend. And a display, and a display can be a view, or it can be Search API pages, or something else that someone invents. But it's just a plugin that plugs into the Search API structure. So we have 3 modules within Search API. You have the main Search API module, Search API database, which gets included as a sub-module of Search API. It gets included, and it's also quite easy to set up and easy to get started with. And as I mentioned earlier, probably good enough to support your search ecosystem or on your side, unless you need features that only are supported by Solr or a Lucene-based solution, such as stemming or more like this, because that's impossible to do on a normal database. And we also have DB defaults. This depends on the standard installation profile, and if the content types of the standard installation profile are found, then we create a server, we create an index, we create a view to be used as a display. We already index the title and the body, and make sure that it's actually relatively easy and fast to get started. So let me show you how that works. We start by, or I started by reinstalling Drupal and creating a bunch of nodes, installing Search API and database search, and database search default. And it takes a while because this was on my laptop and it's quite slow. But it should do everything needed to create a search. And it will be, by default, the path to the view is /search/content. And if it doesn't work, then probably something went wrong, or you forgot to actually index the data into the index. And I guess that's what happened here. I hope that it works after that. So index the data to make sure that it actually gets into the right tables. And then refresh the page, and that's it. That's a 40-second video installing Search API with a database backend and having fields configured and everything that you need to get started with a search on your custom website, which is quite easy to do, I would say. So probably you're not going to be using standard installation profile, or at least not just want to have those fields indexed, and you want to have other fields as well. And you can do that by just adding new fields and re-indexing. You have to remember to re-index every single time that you add a field. This is a UI that's horrible. We know there's an issue. But you can select the fields that you want to index. And in this case, I'm going to choose, it's very hard to read on this screen, I'm sorry. But we're going to index the tags field, go into the taxonomy term, and then index the ID of that taxonomy term. But as you can see, it's a drop-down kind of thing, which means that you can go into your notes and go into the paragraphs field, go into the entity referenced from that paragraph field, use the author, his or her post or create the time, and use that in one index. So you can drill as deep as you want. Yeah, the UI doesn't look very nice as is, and if you're going to be going that deep, it will get confusing, but with great power comes bad UX, apparently. So there's a bunch of things that are not done yet. And those are, or the most important are, fixing that very bad UI that you just saw, and an overall improvement of the administration UI. In the second issue there's an idea to use a token-like pop-up that you can use it to drill down instead of a separate page. Not sure if that's a good solution, not sure if that's the best solution, but if you have any ideas about that, please help us and let us know what you think is the best solution. There's a very weird thing about PHP 5 where tests don't work, but the code actually works, so we have no idea how to resolve that. If you love the test infrastructure and PHP 5, then that might be an issue that you can work on. And we also have to improve documentation and tests, because all of us liked good documentation, and all of us like code that is well tested, and we have to improve it to make sure that it's up to the standards that we all want it to be. Now, I say that we have to improve and add additional tests because that's good, but that doesn't mean that there are no tests. As you can see, on Drupal 7, there were 24 tests for Search API. Now there are 326 tests, which is an order of magnitude. It's a lot more, it's a lot better tested, and that makes us more confident that it actually is very usable, and you can already start using it. Because the confidence that those tests give us. For Solr, I'll give a short introduction and then a demo, because demos are more special or interesting, especially because basically this is all that we do in Search API Solr. There's the Solarium PHP library. It's a very well tested library that uses, that creates connections to Solr and has, creates queries for it, and it's very well tested, it works very well. And all we do is we implement that library and translate Search API query into a Solarium query and translate the Solarium result into a Search API result. And that's basically it. It has that and a bunch of tests that can't be run on the Drupal.org infrastructure because we're actually using a real Solr, or 3 real Solrs, Solr 4.x, 5.x, and 6.x, to test with an actual Solr machine if it works and if it works as expected. And the Drupal.org infrastructure doesn't support that. So we use Travis CI to do that. As I said, a demo is more interesting. So I started by configuring Composer to use the packages of Drupal Composer, and then requiring Drupal/Search API, Search API Solr, which installs the Search API module. It installs the Search API Solr module and the Solarium library. Now you have to use Composer to use Search API Solr. There is no way around it. And the reason is that that's just how Drupal 8 works when you use libraries. You have to do it through Composer because it needs to write the autoloader and a couple of other files that are only written on Composer install. So requiring the module, enabling the module, starting a Solr. In this case, it's just installed through brew, so Solr start, and configuring it. We start by adding a server that uses Solr as a backend, and then configuring it using, in this case, the standard configuration. And we have to fill in the correct core, /d8 in this case. And as you can see, my terminal log is already filling up with things. That's the log of /tail of Solr, the actual Solr log. So you can see that things are happening. When I start indexing it, nodes actually, or logs actually appear because nodes are being inserted into the Solr backend. And then when you search the same page, another line got added because the actual Solr backend was being asked to give information about that page. So it's just switching the index to the newly created server, and that's it. That's all you have to configure to switch from a working MySQL Search API installation to a Search API Solr installation. And if you're using Pantheon, download Search API Solr Pantheon or something like that, and it enables Pantheon as a connector. You have to configure, just click that radio button, save, works for Pantheon. Same thing for Acquia, that they also have a connector. So just download the module, install it, click, configure there, and use Acquia, save, works. Which is not that much work to do. Okay, facets. Is everyone still awake? Okay, good. So I'll also give a small overview of the architecture. I'll share with you a demo and a couple of issues of things that we still need to do. We have two config entities in facets. One being the facet, the other being the facet source. A facet source is the same thing as a Search API display. So a Search API display, a view, is the same thing as a facet source. And the facet source is the actual page display of a view, or the REST display of a view, because we also support REST, or a block display of a view. So it's the actual thing, and per page you can create other facets, and that's just the facet entity that you create and link to it. There's three places that you can hook into facets to change its behavior. There's a processor, which is just a small plugin, and that plugin allows you to alter the data coming in or the data going out before the query is run, after it has come back from Search API, while actually building the results, and one processor or another type of processor to sort the results. We ship with a bunch of sort processors, sort by active value, ascending or descending, by alphabetically ascending or descending, stuff like that. But you can easily create your own plugins to alter the behavior or create the behavior that your client wants. There's also widgets. We ship with links, checkbox, and a dropdown. The checkbox and the dropdowns are just links in JavaScript to make it look like checkboxes and dropdowns. They're not actual checkboxes. There's a technical limitation that we only support changing one item at a time, and we can't be sure of that behavior when using a form, because people can click more than one thing and submit. And because these are actual links, you click something and then it actually goes to the backend and fetches the new page. And there's also a URL processor. We ship by default with the query string URL processor, which is like question mark, donkey is true or whatever. And then there's prettypod, which is /donkey/true. It's the same thing also existed on Drupal 7, but the prettypod won't ship as default in the facets module. So we have facets, we have, that's the main module. We have REST facets to enable facets in a REST display of a view, which means that you have search results and the facets and link to where you should go or you should query to have the filtered result. And we also support core search, so we have a submodule to do that as well. Okay. So enable the module, and this is also not a super pretty UI, but so you select the display and then the field that you want. In this case, I think I went for the type, content type of the nodes. Save it. There's a bunch more options on the second screen, but don't worry about those for now. Just save again. And we try to ship with defaults as sane as possible, so hopefully that should be all that you have to do. We also create a block by default, so every facet that is being created is a block. You place the block on the page, and it appears, and you can filter on it. So by default, we create a block, but since panels also uses blocks to do the same thing, it should be, yeah, sure. You don't have to create exposed filters anymore. No. This is really all the configuration that is needed. And there's a bunch of things that we need to do. One of them is prettypods. We have to finish it. There's also hierarchy, which is being worked on. It's actually done, but needs tests before we can commit it. And if you want to use hierarchy in your facets, and you can test this patch, that would be really awesome. Because the more feedback that we get, the better. We also need to support dates and have like a widget that says 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, and stuff like that, or maybe like last year, and that has special handling, special kinds of queries that we need to write. So we need to do that. That's not being worked on. We need to add, or we are going to add a slider and a range widget. That's actually functional right now and is being worked on right now by Matthias because he needs it to do Search API Geo, which is also not yet done, but to effectively use Geo, you need to have a slider, so he's creating that. We also need to do the current search or the search summary. It had 2 names in Drupal 7. There's a big patch already out there. I think it's almost 100 kilobyte, and someone needs to test it and see if it actually works. And if it doesn't, we need to fix it. And we also need to write, just like in Search API, documentation and tests. So I'll give a short overview of the other add-on modules and their versions. Search API is in beta, so that means it has an upgrade pod and you can trust on it to not change your configuration, or if it changes configuration, then we will provide you with an upgrade pod that you can do drush updb, and it will update the configuration into the new state. Solr is also already into beta, so that means that they also provide an upgrade pod. Search API Pages is in a very usable state, but not in beta yet. Sorts is also usable. It works very well, but we haven't had, I think there's like 2 issues that we need to fix before we can go into beta, and no one has had the time or had wanted to do it. Search API Autocomplete went into their first alpha this week or last week, very recently. That's being worked on by Drunken Monkey, the maintainer of Search API, as well as Daniel Wiener, who's also here. He's also working on that, and that's also usable. There's like 6 or 7 issues open, so not a lot. So that means that it's either very, very good already, or not enough people are using it. Attachments was very usable when I last tested it in September, but I'm not sure how well it works. And there's Exclude Entity, which is one of the many modules that also integrate. This is the follow-up of Exclude Note for Drupal 7. For facets, we have an Alpha 6 release that's a couple of weeks old, and we're probably going to go into beta either next week or the week after, probably, not sure, not exactly sure. There's a couple of things that we need to change in the config, but mainly it's very stable, very usable, and there's a sandbox module out there that still works, that hasn't been updated in like a year, but still functional, and so that's also usable. So I'll show you how to make a custom plugin in Search API. Now, this is a custom plugin, so it's a small custom module that has 1 class and an info file. This is a plugin. If you know how to build plugins, then you don't really need to pay a lot of attention, because it's just a plugin. This is being used in Display Suite, it's being used in Search API, in Facets, in every single Drupal 8 module has plugins to alter the behavior. So this is a very easy and small thing. It's a class that implements the processor interface. It has no configuration. You can add configuration to plugins, but in this case I went for a very easy example. And in this case it's a very weird domain, it's a very weird request, it's a very weird client that wanted to have every node with a pipe in the title, not in the index. You're not able to search on entities that have a pipe in the title. Why, I don't know, probably because it's very easy to build. So that's the plugin, that's it. Probably not very readable, this might be easier. So you create the annotation, it has an ID and a label, a description, those are all self-explanatory, I guess. Stages is somewhat more special. There's a couple of stages where you can define in the code so that Search API knows when this processor is being used. In this case, alter items, which means alter the items that are being indexed. There's a bunch of other stages. There's pre-index, post-index, and pre-query as well, I think. And this is the actual code. So there's an array of items coming into the function by reference. You loop over them, get the original node, check if it's actually a node or not. And if the title has a pipe with spaces around it, then unset it from the array. None of you is going to use this exact code, I hope. Or you have a very weird domain. But if you do ever need to not being able to look for nodes that have like a very programmatic way of explaining why they are not being indexed, then this is actually quite usable. Instead of, you just have to switch out this if statement into something that is actually usable, and then you can use this. So probably something like read out the value of a taxonomy term or something like that. Something that is would be very weird to configure through the UI, but it is easier to express in code, and that's one of the reasons why you would do this. So, should you use any of this right now? According to Swentel, yes, you can. But he already said that in October last year. In October last year, before Drupal 8 was even out, no, that was a bit optimistic. However, for Search API, I would say yeah, and a bunch of other people already use it in production. There's actually 5,100 sites using Search API in production, according to the Drupal.org statistics. For Search API Solr, that's 2.2 sites using it in production. For Facets, it's 1.4. Yeah, 1,400, 1,600 people or sites using it in production. So a little bit less popular, but also already used by a lot of people, and only 40 open issues. So I would say people are happy and they think it's usable. So that was all that I wanted to say about the state of Search API and the Search API ecosystem in Drupal 8. Can I answer any questions? Yeah. Oh, there's a microphone for the recording, apparently.
Regarding the process plugin you showed in your example,
Mm-hmm.
I get it right that it's a pre or an alter index item, so it's after indexing the items?
So I'll repeat the question and I'll find the actual thing. So your question was, is this before indexing or after indexing? This is before indexing. Alter items runs before things are being put in. Well, actually, it's like 2 or 3 lines above things that go into the backend.
So you could, for example, more usable example, you could exclude a node type from being indexed.
So you say that you can exclude a node type from being indexed. Yes, but you can also do that through the UI. So in the UI, you can say, I want to have these and these and these bundles indexed of nodes, and I want to have commerce products indexed, and I only want to have the default bundle indexed, and I want to have users indexed in the same index. So the same backend, the same table is being used for nodes and users and whatever. And you can configure each bundle. Yeah.
So we've used Fast and Search API in the latest project, and we've experienced a couple of issues. One is with data and range. If you use like in between, you can't use it because the core function is add expression. It's not supported inside the Search API, but if you alter it to use add then it works. Now I pushed the patch for that. And what I'm interested in, we are using flag module, but it's not yet supported by the Search API. I mean, you cannot relate like content that is being flagged by someone. You see the flags as a separate like content types, but you can't see the content that is flagged by this user. So you can't separate it or even relate it with the relationship inside the view on an index view. It works fine with a regular view, but not with an index one.
Okay, so the question is, how is the support for flags in Search API? It's not, not yet, no. Can you create an issue in the issue queue, and I'll have a look. Maybe I can figure it out, and if I can, then we'll post the patch and hopefully get it in soon. And if I can't, then we need to find someone that can help. But please create an issue. That's the only way that I'll be able to remember it after tonight. Any other questions? Yeah.
How about push state in Search API and Ajax in Search API?
Search API with push state and Ajax not working right now. That's a quick answer. Will it be in Search API? I'm not sure if it's actually usable for Search API. Because the only thing in Search API that I would be able to do is for actual searching. For facets, we plan on supporting it somewhat soon, as soon as someone wants to actually finish the patch and has time to finish the patch. But we plan to support it in with facets. I don't think Search API itself will ever support it. Any other questions?
Yeah. How could I handle the restricted content with indexing with Solr, for example?
Restricted content?
Yeah, to be sure that the content isn't publicly available through the index.
Oh, to make sure that content is not available through the index when indexing with Solr, make sure that you configure your Solr correctly. Use HTXs or something similar, or a firewall, or configure Solr, or use Acquia because they've done that for you.
Regarding regular expression, are there plans for it for Solr? I mean, you can use it like have a filter with regular expression inside the index filter.
A filter with regular expressions with Solr. I have no idea. I don't really understand, and I'm so.
You want to pull the data from the index based on regular expression, you cannot.
Okay, so you can't.
Supported by Solr.
It's supported by Solr, but not yet by Search API. Can you create an issue? I'm not very familiar with how Solr works, so create an issue and either I'll look at it or Marcus, who's the maintainer, will take a look at it. There was another question here, I think.
I just wanted to ask, what is the best way to create environment aware Solr server?
Okay, environment aware Solr server, which means that you're using a different Solr server on production and on QA. Is that what you mean?
Example on that server and production.
So one of the issues that were it's further back. That one. Have a look at that issue. Please help out. I'll leave this slide open, but that's the issue about that. To be able to make sure that you use a different index on each of your environments. It might also help to use config split, but that might also be able to resolve your issue. But this is the issue that we've been using to talk about that exact thing. Any other questions?
More into the processing plugins. Is there a way to implement process plugins to alter the display of search results? So I want to index all of the data, but filter by process plugins.
Is there a way to alter the display of search results based on some result? Not right now, but if you're using a view with a view mode, then configure view modes that do what you want them to do. That would be one of the solutions. Otherwise, I have no idea. So, if there are any other questions, then I can answer them. And otherwise, we'll probably go to the closing session in like a couple of minutes. Okay, that was it. Thanks.